Welcome to Archery Talk 101 podcast, your guide to better archery skills. We'll bring you the latest tips, tricks, and expert advice, but that's not all. We'll also have interviews with top archers and industry professionals and reviews of the latest gear and equipment and much more. Hi, my name is Roy Canterbury and we host today at Archery Talk 101, and we have a special guest on the line with us, Logan. He's going to tell us what's going on in his world of archery. But before we get started that, I want to let you know the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group is associated with this one. I also run that one as well. That's a group for those that want to get into archery, and whether you're beginner or advanced, professional, Olympic archer, we have all of them in the group. If you have a problem with your form or your bow, just upload a video and tell us what's going on, and we'll gladly give you the land. Well, welcome to the show, Logan.
Thank you. How are you doing, Roy?
Doing great. Another Father's Day, we're recording this one, and you know, as fathers need to have fun on Father's Day.
Yeah. Happy Father's Day, everyone. Beautiful Sunday here in Iowa.
Yeah, and it's a nice day here in Nebraska. We're not too far apart. I'm in eastern Nebraska between Omaha and Lincoln, and I forget where you're at in Iowa, but whereabouts in Iowa are you from? Oh no, I think it froze.
There we are.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, darn internet. I thought it might be my end because I actually got a program running in the background that's rendering a video I created. Actually, the podcast, I recorded a podcast earlier today, and it's gone through, and I made a mistake, and I hit the stop record and had to start it again, and I had to merge them together.
Nice.
So I thought it might be my end doing that. But whereabouts in Iowa are you from?
I'm from Sheraton, Iowa. I'm pretty close to the Missouri border, but I grew up in Seymour, which is even closer. Small town.
Okay. Yeah, small town. I'm in Ithaca, in between Omaha and Lincoln, which it's not even a town; it's a village.
Yeah. 5 houses.
168 people in Ithaca, and so it's a small village, which is nice because, hey, you don't have much going on. You know, our traffic jams here are 2 cars behind a combine. That's traffic jam here.
That's right. Same here. I'm in a good sized town now, but I grew up in a town about 500 people. So
yeah, there can be advantages and disadvantages, but you know, hey, I would rather be here than in a big city.
Yeah. And as far as whitetail, you sure want to be further away from population.
Yeah, and I see them within a mile of my house. I see them, and we have a big old flock of turkeys that it's around here, and I've seen like probably 3 dozen turkeys in a flock. You know, within a mile of my house.
That's great. Yeah, it's nice to see the populations up on turkey, because then you know deer's doing all right usually.
Yeah. Well, we don't have much pheasant anymore, and I think the turkeys are kind of taking over for the pheasants. And
gotcha.
Yeah, you don't get as many birds, but they're sure a whole lot bigger.
Yeah. We got a decent bird population down here, which I'm kind of surprised by. We've had really bad droughts the last few summers, and but our bird population seems really well off, so that's good.
Yeah, that's always good. So what made you pick up the bow for the first time?
So I picked a bow up a few years ago, and it would have been probably almost 10 years ago now. And I picked a bow up. I wanted to get in tune with nature. I've been hunting my whole life, but I hadn't bow hunted before. And so I went out and I sat down, and I just did it old style, you know, no stand. Kind of just knew where the deer were traveling, and that's what I went with.
So did you start off with the recurve, or you just started in with the compound?
Compound. Started out with the compound ball, and just sitting up against a tree, standing or sitting up against a tree, old style. I learned a lot. I definitely learned a lot of what not to do.
Yeah. Well, you know, lots of times learning what not to do is better than trying to figure out what to do. And you know, there's been many cases where you failed multiple times and then you got it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
I like
right.
to use example WD-40, it's water displacement formula. And this is formula number 40, which actually worked. The other
Yeah,
39
yeah.
didn't work. So, they failed 39 times before they got one right. And the same
That's
thing,
right.
with sticky notes. They're trying to
Yeah.
develop an adhesive and found out those like, oh, it sticks, but it doesn't really stick, and you can put it on and off, and sticky notes.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. You got to fail to get where you want to be. That's same
Yeah.
with bow hunting and about everything else outdoors.
Yeah, you go in there and you do something wrong and you spook the deer off, then it's like, well, don't do that.
Yeah,
Or
that didn't
or you
work.
or you draw back and shoot your arrow and completely miss the whole thing, and then later on then you take a practice shot out of the same stand, hit the leaf you're aiming at. Well, I better aim next time. You
Yeah,
can't
right.
just
Right.
you just can't point it at the deer and expect it to go where you want.
And then there's the famous, oh, I got this one, and oh, I didn't realize there was a stick right there. And you bounce an arrow.
I've done that. I shot one time and I caught a branch I did not see, had a
Yeah,
luminoc in it. And of course, I found my arrow, but no luminoc. It hit just right, so it flew that luminoc out. So it didn't turn it on, didn't stay on because it was on, and then it went off, went flying. One shot is gone. I
yeah,
had another time I shot at a deer and I heard this big old thwack. I'm like, man, I had a good hit. I hit something good and hard. Yeah, it was about a inch and a half diameter tree. I split it right down the middle.
you sure hit it hard, didn't you?
Yeah, because it's like, okay, here's a good spot. It's like, and it was one branch, one little bitty tree, about an inch in diameter. It was going up right in front of it, and you couldn't really see it.
Yeah,
You're in a forest, you have a lot of big. You're not looking for the little bitty ones.
yeah. I'll tell you what. One thing I really learned was hunting public with archery is a lot different than hunting private ground.
Oh
Private
yeah,
ground, yeah, private ground eliminates a lot of competition or running into another archer out there, and yeah, public can get a little crowded sometimes, or somebody comes in, don't really know what they're doing, and they can kind of blow the hunt for you. But also sometimes you can adjust and make it work out too. I've seen
right.
that.
Yeah, I had one time I was hunting further down south, and the deer were coming through too late at night. And so I knew where
Yeah,
this at, and I could move up north. So I moved up north and I says, okay, I want to be in my stand by 4 o'clock.
yeah,
So because they're getting down to me about 5:30. That time, it was dark at 5:30. I had to quit. So
exactly.
if I get up there by 4, then they're going to come through probably about 4:30 or 5 or so, and be just fine. So I'm climbing up my tree and I get into my tree, and somebody had been walking around further up because it was public property and kicked the
Yeah,
deer up. So now it's trotting past me, not a dead rope, but it's trotting past me. So I'm drawn back and I shoot. I say, okay, do I follow it? I time it. It's like, so I shot, hit it a little bit too far back. It was like 410. I'd just been up in the tree.
yeah,
Of course, then we had to, back out and go because it wasn't a good hit, and come back
yeah,
next night and get it. And, there we're hunting for a lump of snow. There's a deer covered in snow because it's going to snow, quite a bit
yeah,
that night. And it did enough to cover it all up. And we got to it, and, it was dead. We kicked it up once,
yeah.
just tracking it the first time. And we stopped and walked straight out so we knew where to come in. And if we'd have kept going, it would have been gone. It was found about 30 feet later, or 30 yards later.
Okay.
It had laid back down because we didn't spook it off. And there was a lot of people there, so they're not really afraid of people. They
Yeah,
just kind of move out of the way. It's not
yeah,
like they get paranoid and run for miles to
yeah.
avoid a
They
human
just
that they.
they'll just run a few hundred yards and either lay back down or hold tight.
Yeah, and this didn't
Yeah,
move very far, and it lay down, and it died. And it was, here in Nebraska, in Iowa, we have some pretty cold winters, and
yeah,
it was cold, and we got to it, and the legs were froze, but the rest of it was still warm.
perfect, perfect.
It was still warm, and it had snow on it, which helps insulate it, but it was down, into freezing, that
Yeah.
night and all that next day. And, it just took a while to die. And that's why when you make those bad hits, oh man, that's terrible. You feel bad when you do one of those, but
Well, at least when you went to get it, it was still warm.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, that's better than being, that's the
It-
only problem at that point,
if it was froze solid, that would have been a tough one to clean.
Yeah, no kidding, no kidding. Yeah, a lot of guys I see ask about that, about bumping deer, after they've hit one. And that can be a really tricky question based on the situation, from what I've seen,
Yeah,
especially for a new bow hunter, I mean, they say, hey, do I wait a couple hours? Well, a lot of it also depends on, where you hit it and so on. But I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to pretend to be a professional bow hunter. I'm amateur at best. But bow hunting, kind of took me a different route too. That's what got me into trapping. And that's what I've really been obsessed with the last few years.
so you do a lot of trapping then, huh?
I trap every year, and I'm an animal damage control guy. So I trap from fall to spring, and then I trap spring to fall doing animal damage control work. And I trap everything. I mean, anything here in Iowa, I trap it. So,
If it's legal to trap, you trap it.
yeah, that's right. That's right. And even in the summer, I'm trapping, like I mentioned to you, I do animal damage control, and I trap groundhogs. Today I went and checked a groundhog job, a beaver job, raccoon job, and then another groundhog job. So, that's just a glimpse of what I do. But I'm outdoors all the time, and I learned a lot about whitetail and their movement. I've seen several good sized bucks this year in the velvet, and I kind of watch how they move. We're in a severe drought here in southern Iowa, and so there, a lot of guys, when they bow hunt, they think about food. But I was talking to a good friend of mine who's a great bow hunter. I mean, he just really successful. He makes it look easy. And he said, everybody tends to focus on food when bow hunting. And he said, I focus on water, whether it be a pond, whether it be a river. He said, when you're in a drought, it's really nice because that deer's got to drink water.
Right.
You got to have water, even more so than the food than food, especially in a severe drought.
Just like us, we can go longer without food than we can without water.
Exactly.
About 3 days without water, and we're pretty much toast.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
We
right.
can easily go 3 days without food.
Yeah.
Well, not
yeah,
easily.
well,
I mean, our body will tolerate it, but
I'm a big guy. I don't know if 3 days is a good number for me.
no. But
But
yeah, I have trouble going a day without drinking a bunch of water. So yeah,
that's
3 days
right.
would be 3 days would be, I'd be having trouble after 2 days of no water.
That's right. That's right. And I can't tell you how many times when I'm trapping, I'll come up over a riverbank or whatever, and there'll be a buck or a couple does down there drinking water, even bedded down right there on the side of the bank, especially in warmer weather. Makes you wonder. Are we always doing it right? Always just setting up by food?
Yeah, that's something I hadn't really thought too much about. That's why I enjoy having guests on, because I always learn something. Every podcast I learn something, and I hope the people listening and watching, get that as well. The podcast comes out twice a week.
Yeah.
On places you're going to listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple. You can also listen to it on Audible. I'm actually on Audible, so you can get out there and listen to it. It doesn't cost you anything to listen to it on that. And then the YouTube channel, you can get to watch them and interact with us. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, Facebook group, they actually get to send comments in.
Yeah. When you reached out to me, I was pretty excited because, you know, as a trapper, primarily, even though I bow hunted before, I see a lot of unique stuff out there when I'm trapping. And just this last winter, I was driving my trap line about 9, 10 in the morning, and a doe came hammering across the road, and right behind her was a bobcat. And they
Oh,
ran down into a bottom, and that bobcat never let that doe come out of that bottom. And so that makes you wonder how many whitetail are getting killed by bobcats and coyotes, you know.
yeah,
A mature buck can be killed by a couple of coyotes. All they have to do is just sit there and keep chasing that buck and nipping at his rear end until he bleeds out enough and wears down enough, and then they got him. And
yeah,
so a lot of guys work really hard to grow their deer, you know, to grow good whitetail with a nice rack, good tines and everything. And coyotes can take that away from you. And so can bobcats. They'll
yeah.
kill grown deer. One bobcat will. So just something to think about, and also some food for thought. They did a study years ago, and they put a trail cam on a bobcat den, and I think they shut it off after that bobcat had pulled in over 40 fawns to go feed her kittens. So I mean, if that puts it in perspective for those guys who grow deer, one bobcat killed over 40 fawns, and they pulled the trail cam. They said it wasn't funny anymore. You know,
Yeah,
you know, that's a lot of deer.
yeah, yeah, a lot of deer. And I know around here we have coyotes. I can hear them at night lots of times. You know, there's a couple different directions I hear them, and you know, it's like, okay, we need to get rid of some of those because they're going to take a lot of the deer out, and I'd rather have the deer than the coyotes.
Me too, me too. And I'm a trapper, and I'd still rather have the deer than the coyotes. You know,
Yeah,
because and I know whitetail populations can get pretty high, but at the same, I know coyotes, you know, are a necessary evil, but I'd rather have more deer than more coyotes any day.
yeah. 'Cause then
And
it just upped our quotas so we can take more deer. You know, if it gets too many.
yeah, yeah, that's right, that's right. And so yeah, there's just a lot of, you know, when I'm out trapping too. Another thing I see is a lot of guys walking in bow hunt, and I watch a lot of bucks navigate around them. And so that's pretty interesting because there's one river bottom where I trap, and I drive down it, and it's a couple mile stretch, and there's about 6 to 8 bow hunters that set up on that one bottom every day. And I watch a couple monster bucks navigate around all of them, and come out of that bottom right at the road, and then just be standing next to the road looking down into those bottoms at all those bow hunters. Like, man, you gave yourself away or something, you know. Makes you
Trying to,
wonder what that buck's seeing, you know. Is he seeing you? Is he smelling you? Are you going in the same route every time, and he just, you know, picks up your scent and decides to go around that whole area completely? You know, it's interesting.
yeah, I've heard stories of stuff like that where they just walk around and avoid you. And I know the area we're hunting, that the is talking to the wife of the that owns the land, and she said she was down there one time and seen it's probably my son up in the platform he built, and it's like he was out there looking. The deer was basically underneath the platform, had snuck in on him, and it was like, turn. She's kind of thinking, turn around, turn around, turn around. It's behind you.
You know, almost thinks you need a scouter, you know, if you're watching you, give you a quick text or something, you know.
Yeah. Oh, the fact that they classified that as illegal, but still.
Yeah. And you know, something interesting is when I see a lot of these bow hunters, I'll try to give them advice, and some of them just totally disregard me because I'm a trapper. And then the other ones realize, like, I'm telling you this because I'm seeing this buck do this every day, and I want you to get him. I want you put in all that work, man. I want you to succeed. And some of those bucks, they navigate out the same way every time, and I'll watch them cross right by the road right by a pond, and I'm like, guys, if we just set up on this little public up in this corner, I know there's nothing there but a pond and 2 trees, but I'm telling you, he'll come right to you.
I find that in coaching as well. I became a coach in 1995, and I've talked to lots of people, and you go talk to them, and within 2-3 minutes, okay, I'm not even going to help them because their attitude is, no, I can't tell you nothing. You can't tell me anything. I know everything. It's like, okay, next I spend my time with somebody that cares, that wants to learn.
Right.
And
that's right. You give them a thumbs up, and you just kind of just walk away like, well, good luck.
Yeah. Well, it's there. Well, they'll listen to you. Got the big buck.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the thing is, when I see somebody working hard, I never want them to fail. Even if it's a big buck in an area where I'm not going to lie to you, so you fail. I know a lot of guys will do that, but that's not me. And so when I tell you advice, it's sincere. It's like, you put in the work. Here's what I'm seeing. I hope it helps you. And then, like you said, some people just say, no, I know it all. Okay, well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
I'll watch that buck for another 2 years then.
Yeah, until you're ready to do it. And I know my hunting buddy that I used to hunt with, he said he watched this buck or this buck or the doe, I forget which one it was now, walking down this trail. He's got his old shooting lane, so it's behind a tree. All of a sudden, the deer stops. He's waiting for it to come out in the opening. It stops, and then it runs for about 5 feet and stops walking again. The only shooting lane, that deer comes up, walks up, stops, runs, stops, walks.
That is frustrating. That is frustrating. Right. And you're drawing back, and you're sitting there like, come on, just 1 second, just make
one step.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Years ago we were hunting. I also have shotgun hunted here in southern Iowa. That was a big thing, especially in the 90s, was shotgun hunting for deer. And I was shotgun hunting with a group, because that's how a lot of us did it, in the 90s and 2000s till about 2018, it started to slow down a little bit. But we were pushing this piece of grass. It was about knee tall, maybe just a hint taller. And we had standers up on the hills, and we were spread out, and it was me, my dad, and another relative, and we were all pretty experienced, deer hunters. And we were spread out good, and we were pushing this grass, and we could hear something in the grass, but we couldn't see anything. And so we just kind of kept paying attention. And well, what happened was there was a buck in there, and he was running on his knees, like real low, dog crawling really fast. And so John, who runs the group, was up on the hill watching him through a scope, dog crawl around on us back and forth. And then he crawled real fast out to the furthest point. You couldn't even see his antlers. He was keeping them so low. And he crawled out to the furthest point and kicked across the field right in the gap where we didn't have anybody.
Figures, huh?
Yeah, I mean, and John said that buck was moving, but on his not his knees, his elbows or whatever, it could be his knees. And he said, but it was like a soldier army crawling, but really fast is what it looked like. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And we knew something was in there, and we'd stand on our tippy toes trying to look ahead. We couldn't see him at all. Couldn't even see his rack. He'd keep his head low and everything. So that goes to show you some of the intelligence, on some of these mature bucks.
Yeah. How did they learn to do that?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And something I learned shotgun hunting that applied to me more when I was bow hunting is we'd have pushers and standers. Are you very familiar with shotgun hunting, Roy?
Yeah, we do rifle over here, but I was traditionally always been shotgun.
Yeah.
And I think now they're starting to get in where you can use rifles over there, but
That's right. That's right. And it's changing the game quite a bit here in Iowa, but I do think it'll affect our big buck population. I think it'll be more private ground hunting, and eventually it'll be high powered. Right now we're limited, range high powered that can only shoot 300 yards or 200 yards. But they'll just keep doing that, which will knock down our big buck population, which will be kind of sad. We'll be like Missouri. We'll be like Missouri, where they shoot an 8-pointer and it's a trophy. Well, here in Iowa, an 8-pointer is not really even a trophy. It's a good buck. It's a good buck, but it's anyways. So learning to shotgun group hunt, when I switched to our group kind of converted to a different group in a different area. And John said, hey, you guys, when you're standing out too far. We'd stand out too far from the timber. And so he'd tell us to tuck in just a little more, because those deer would run across, or they'd be watching us and we wouldn't know it. And and they would see us because we were out just a little too far from the timber. And so that kind of applies to bow hunting too. If you're standing on the ground, tuck in a little further into the timber. I know it gives you a little less shooting lanes, but it does help as far as, the deer not spotting you, because they're looking for movement, so on. But that helped me anyways. Bow hunting.
Yeah, if you're out where they can see you, they're gonna see you because they see pretty well.
Yeah, and I know that's a common sense kind of thing, but for a new bow hunter who's trying on the ground without like a blind or a tree stand, it may seem like a common sense thing, but you may be that guy if you're new to bow hunting that's standing out too far for better shooting lanes, and it could cost you.
Yeah, well, that's learn from your mistakes.
That's right. I sure make plenty of those, but I luckily each year there's a few less that I make.
Well, yeah, and that about hunting food as opposed to hunting water. Most of think of food plots, but not really thinking of water. And I've got an area that I have to hunt, and they don't hold deer because there's alfalfa and then corn or beans or whatever, but there's just basically a fence row around, so there's not a lot of trees. And with the trail cameras, they're coming through mostly at night. Well, I did find back in February of this year, there was one spot they were coming out during the day, but there's no water. Plenty of food, but no water. The closest water is a little ways away, and that's something to think about. Maybe
it really is.
Instead of putting a feeder out there, put water out there.
That's right. It really makes you think. And another thing that I do with trapping that can relate to bow hunting is you use the terrain to your advantage when you're trapping. And when you're bow hunting, like a perfect scenario for me in my eyes, and I've seen guys who focus more on food hunting for whitetail. Maybe this is something you should consider, that I've noticed, is there'll be a hill that slopes down and you'll have a pond, and there's just a little travel way in between that, that hill and that pond. Well, sometimes there'll be a tree or something right there. That is a great spot. That's a great spot for coyotes and stuff too. But your whitetail, that's a narrow corridor right there. So that's something that maybe an outside perspective. I know some guys use this stuff in bow hunting, and it's a common sense thing. But sometimes an outside perspective like that of a trapper like myself might give you a different angle or version to think about, that, where you use that terrain, that pinch point like we do trapping coyotes for whitetail. Because I mean, I can't tell you how many times I trap coyotes and the whitetail are traveling right there too.
Same path.
Yeah, the same path. Yeah, they run the same trails. Deer and coyotes do. They really do. And you know, a lot of times, I had a drill sergeant in the Army, and he would tell me this. He would say, snipers in the military focus on people being lazy because we're lazy. You know, if we can
Right.
travel on a trail that we always travel, that's what we're going to do. Well, he said that, and he was trying to refer to what to watch for with the enemy and what they
Right.
use against us. But you can relate that to wildlife too. Coyotes and bobcats and white-tailed deer. You know, they will use those same trails over and over again. I call them deer highways when I find a trail that's just been blazed by deer.
Yeah.
You know, that you find a couple sheds on every year, every spring. Those are good key points to kind of think about, I feel like.
Find the path that they're walking and set up on their path. And
Yeah,
sometimes they
exactly.
just roaming around so much, there's no real defined trail. Like when
That's
it's hunting the one public property, you know, there's lots of trails, but they're not anything beat down because, well, there's a lot of campers in there and people in there all the time. So they just kind of wander around, but they stay
Yeah,
in the same general area. You know, you might say, oh, this is beat down pretty good. This is a good trail. And you
that's
really don't notice it because the one next to it is, yeah, not really noticeable that it's a trail. And sometimes you have to just look for the leaves that are knocked down or cleared away or something. And
yeah. And you know, there's a lot of times in like river bottoms or by lakes where I see 20 deer trails, but they all come to one major deer trail. And I mean, that's just, you know, in my eyes, that's gold to set up on that major.
yeah, find a spot with some water and in between two food plots, water, you know, that's something
Exactly.
that I think we need to start looking at too is, you know, where's the water? Because they need food, but they also need water. And, you know, if there's
That's
snow on
right.
the ground, like, you know, not Nebraska and Iowa, if there's snow on the ground, they always have the option of, you know, eating the snow for their water. But, you know,
That I agree. And that's where I feel like you need to, you know, at least for me, that's when I'm thinking actually more shelter is what I'm looking for at that point.
right.
Where's the best place for them to be bedded down and sheltered in at, you know, out of the wind and the snow and the cold, you know. So that I kind of changed my mindset to that. But, you know, during the rut and fall, before the snow kicks in, I'm thinking water and I'm thinking travel. Even when the rut kicks in, I mean, if you're on a main deer trail, you know those bucks always won't follow it, you know, if they smell a doe.
Right.
But those does will follow that main deer trail, and if they're following it, that buck sure is bound to come along, you know.
Right. They're going to be following the does.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I don't know, just those different perspectives, and that's what I love to learn too, Roy, because like the way you hunt is different than the way I hunt, and there's nothing wrong with the way you hunt or the way I hunt. I can learn
Right.
from just as much as you know we can learn from each other.
Yeah. And that's what, you know, so good talking to different hunters. It's like everybody has their own experiences. And, you know, if I can shortcut that experience, if I don't have to learn how to do it wrong by somebody else that already did it, then hey, you know, let's learn that. And, you know, same
That's
thing. If
right.
there's something I've learned because I've done it wrong, then hey, let's pass it on and makes all of us better hunters. And,
It
you know,
does.
after all, we want the meat in our freezer.
That's right. That's right. You know, every year I eat a couple deer through the year. I got three boys. Those mouths don't feed themselves, you
No.
know. And deer chili, you know, I throw deer in almost everything. A pound of deer meat, a pound of ground beef is a good combination for our
Oh
family.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it adds a good taste too. I mean,
Well, and that leans out the beef, so you know you can get 85% lean, and if you take 100% lean venison, you know the deer is you don't want any fat in it.
yeah, yep, that's right.
Yeah, so you trim all fat off of deer meat, and you take
Yeah.
as much of the sinew off as you can, because, those that haven't, there might be listening that don't really know too much about it. The difference between a butcher ground and your own ground is night and day,
It is completely,
because
completely.
they don't trim all the fat off, and deer fat smells bad and tastes bad when you cook with it.
That's right. That's right.
So
That's where you want to throw your own fat in, or throw in some beef with some beef fat in,
right, right. Because
Yeah.
the deer is really lean, because there's no fat in it, because you're doing all that out. And
Yeah.
I process the deer myself, just because that way I
That's
can cut it the way I want it cut.
that's
If I
how
want to take
we
the
always
back
get
straps
into it.
out, cut them up how I want to do. If I want to do roasts, I can do them in the sizes that I want, the quantities I want. If I want to package 4 in a package, because that's what we'll eat in one meal. Because right now it's just my wife and I here, so I would
Yeah.
package it up. What would we eat in one time? Now
Yeah.
you with 3 boys, and you might have, your chops might be 6 or 8 of them in there, because that's one meal's worth. So you
Yeah.
can package them up, and if you go to the butcher, you're going to get them however they feel like doing them, and
That's
you're
right.
not always sure you're getting your meat back. They might say, yeah, what comes in, and go throw this. Yeah, no, you
You
can't
don't
do
know
that.
that it's your deer. Yeah, you don't know for sure. And my wife, she loves a good deer steak and bread and gravy. Like that's one of her go-to meals to cook up. Deer steaks and gravy, and crumble some bread in there. Ooh, but
Yeah, there's I know when I first started getting deer, one deer would last our family the whole year, because we didn't know, there's 3 kids and wife and I, and we didn't really know how to fix them, the best way to fix them, so we didn't really eat much. And then
yeah,
it got down, it's like, one deer don't last long. And I know one year I had a freezer with a moose in it, and I had deer in there. It was completely full, and I got another deer. Now what do I have no freezer space. I can't freeze it.
yeah,
So I started making jerky out of the dehydrator. That deer was gone
perfect.
within 2 weeks. It was
Yeah,
gone. Because my kids say, is it ready yet? Ready yet? And I'd marinate it in it's a Claude's sauce made in I think San Antonio, Texas. It's a
okay.
it's a brisket marinade, and it's really, really good. And I'd marinate in that. And as soon as it was done, we'd pull it off the dehydrator, and it's one of those, with the round trays on it with the fan in the bottom. So it did
Yeah,
pretty quick. As soon as those are off, by the time I get the next batch done, those are about gone. And so, yeah, I think it was 2-3 weeks, and that whole deer was gone. I made
that's
jerky out of
awesome.
everything. The whole
And,
deer went
and
into jerky.
and you'll never have more friends than you have when you make deer jerky. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, friends come out of the woodworks. It's like winning the lottery. 20 people are like, hey, I had your backpack in '94.
Yeah. 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 And
Yeah,
a lot of us say, you go out deer hunting, and it's like, oh, eh, give me a steak.
yeah.
Okay, I'll call you when I get ready to haul it out, so you can help me haul it out. And you call him, it's like,
That's
oh, I'm
that's
busy.
right.
And then it's like, okay, I'll call you and get ready to dress it. No, you call him up. No, I'm busy. Yeah, but where's my steak?
Yeah, that's right. They don't want to put in the work, but they'll sure take that steak if.
Yeah. So no, those that come help, hey, why not? I know the first time my brother and I field dressed the deer, our cousin, which lives in Iowa up by Woodbine, he got a
Okay.
deer, and he said, I'll split the deer with you if you want to cut it up and package it for me. I was like, okay. So we
Yeah,
didn't know what I was doing. So we got, some stuff on it, looked up some how to do it, and we cut it and package it up. And that was the first experience at doing a deer. And now there's a lot of tricks that you learn. And one thing we
and it's
learned by
fun.
accident, yeah. And you get, it's good meat, how it's cared for.
Yeah,
Um, you know, you package it the way you want. If you want it, like I did some pepperoni sticks one time, but I didn't want to put them in the skins. So I just put them in the thing, made them round, froze them, and
yeah.
then, had them all ready, and do hamburger and everything else. You can have them all ready, and freeze them and separate them with, plastic wrap, or wax paper and go from there. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do.
You're
Make it the way
making me
you want.
hungry, bud.
I know. I'm making myself hungry. It's like, I gotta go get something to eat here pretty soon.
I know you're talking about all these good ways to make up deer meat, and I'll tell you what, it is a passion once you start handling the meat as well. It goes just as much with actually going out and killing them. It's just as fun to get home and process that meat the way you want it, and then cook it up. Like you say, you learn tricks over the years, and man, you kind of look forward to that meal at the end of the day that you brought home.
Yeah. Well, and probably, I went to restaurants, that are high-end ones that when you go in, they're black tablecloths and they have the guy that expedites the orders and the menus just have 2-digit numbers for a price, just no dollar sign, just 2-digit numbers.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's $12.99 for a steak. It
Yeah.
doesn't say $12.99. It might just say 20. No dollar sign, nothing. And I went in and had a really good steak in there. The only thing that comes close to it, most steak restaurants, I'd rather have a hamburger because they can't cook them very good. But the best time I had meat that wasn't kind of like from one of those places was I pulled the tenders out, fired up the grill. I threw them on the grill. And, a tender, for those that don't know, gets narrow at the ends. So it tapers down. And I'm watching it. Okay, took my knife or my fork in the end of it, knife, cut off, ate it, cut off the other end, ate it. As it's cooking in, I'm eating it as it's going. Oh man, that was so good.
That sounds good.
Yeah. This, the outside's going to turn a little bit, get riper. Yeah. I'm thinking gardening, but it's gonna cook to that medium rare. And one thing with venison, do not cook it well done.
No.
Oh no.
And see,
Unless you like liver.
My wife likes it well done, and it's so hard because I do not. I do not like my deer meat well done, and she grew up with them cooking it well done, and I don't know if that's just the way they did it for because they thought, oh, it's safer. I don't know. But I don't like my deer meat can't be well done. That's just not an option.
Yeah, it's like medium rare.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
Medium rare. I don't like them rare because then they're chewy.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah,
I agree.
If they're rare, they're chewy. And I like medium rare because I don't like them much more than that. And when you sometimes you cook them and it turns out perfect, and then other times like, darn, I left it on 30 seconds too long. It's over.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line.
Yeah, I went to a restaurant one time and come out, it's like, that's a little bit rare. And it's like, so we sent it back and it's like, 30 seconds back on the grill, come back perfect. I'd rather come in a little under. I can always send it back and say, hey, you need about 30 seconds longer on the grill. Throw it on there, cook it a little bit more. They may just not let it rest long enough. Because like you cook a steak, you cook them, you don't cut into them, the juices run out, you let them sit and for a few minutes. And it kind of, I don't know, that's what restaurants do that know what they're doing, and sit there and absorb all the juices back into it. And
that's right.
I'm
because
getting
if
hungry.
you cut it, it'll leak all the good stuff right out.
Right.
Yeah.
Tyler, we gotta quit talking about food here.
I know. I skipped lunch today, man. I skipped lunch running those jobs out there. Now I'm hungry.
Yeah, I didn't have much for lunch, and it's already, it's almost 5 o'clock here. You're in the same time zone I am. So it's time to eat again. And I was out, I forgot the first podcast done. I'm working on a project for I'm building a little access door for a crawl space. And it's like at the apartment, I come in for this one and I go back out there and I'm gonna have to get something to eat.
Right.
I'm talking about food here.
Yeah. Oh man, I wish I had some deer jerky right about now too. Deer jerky or deer steaks, one of the two.
Yeah, no, we just have to. If it wasn't close together, I'd come over and we'd have some steaks.
That would be great. Yeah, that'd be a good time.
I'm out of deer steaks. My son had some, but I'm out now, so I'm back down to beef.
Now, I'm down to 2 packages of deer steaks, 2. I mean, it's tough times, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
I,
time to get ready for deer season again.
that's right, that's right. I need more meat for the freezer, yeah. You know, it's interesting. I watched a podcast the other day about, you know, how they bow hunted deer back in the olden days a lot. And it was pretty interesting to me. The podcast really pulled me in because a lot of times they just go in and sit on a tree stump and bow hunt,
Yeah,
you know, or they take a bucket in and sit on a bucket and they'd have a flannel shirt on. Um, so, you know, it's weird because a lot of guys are focused in a lot on scent control, which I do believe it's important, especially if the
right.
wind's not in your favor, you know. But what I do a lot with trapping, and I noticed it worked. I've snuck up on some deer trapping unintentionally, where they couldn't smell me, is I leave the jacket in the truck. You know, I won't wash my jackets all the time or my sweaters or whatever I'm wearing. You know, my t-shirts and stuff, that's a little different, but I don't go full rogue, you know.
Yeah,
But but anyways, I just let that stuff kind of just sit with the smell of nature. My wife will tell me, she says, "You stink." And I'm like, I said, "Like body odor?" She said, "No, like nature." And I said, "Well, that's what I want. I like my
right.
smell." And I snuck up on some deer that it just blows my mind. I've been loud as you could be, it seems like, but they can't smell me. And it's, I think a lot of times it's because that jacket or that hoodie or whatever I'm wearing, it has not seen a washer in, you know, a month and a half of being out trapping and so on. And I just feel like that's kind of a good scent control that maybe some guys don't use. You know, everybody's into the sprays, the soaps, and everything like that. And it makes you think maybe, you know, if you go old fashioned route, it might be worth trying. I don't know. It works pretty well for me. But then again, I also try to have the wind in my favor too.
Right.
But that don't always work either. It's, you know, the wind shifts and you're in trouble real quick.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options. It's just you know, each area is different. You know, if we go hunt,
Yeah.
you know, go hunt the deer at the one farm, they're going to hunt them different than the other one. You know, one's a mile from me, and the other one's 2 miles from me. So if I go to the one, there's a creek there, and the other one there's no creek, but most of it is a cornfield. So there's really not much in there. The only place we really got is when they go down to get a drink, you know, because we don't have access to hunt the other side of the creek. So we have to wait for them to go down in there, but that's where the water is.
Yeah.
You know, so you know,
That's
as
right.
long as it doesn't freeze up, but it's a creek, and you know, sometimes it'll freeze up, but normally not the winters we've been having around here. It doesn't freeze up, so there's always water.
We've had some weird winters here too. Yeah, it's just been not as cold as usual till way later, you know, almost spring. And yeah, it's been pretty weird, you know. And another thing, when you're deer hunting, I noticed, just like with trapping, the weather is so important. You know, I've hunted in snowstorms and you know, shotgun hunted and had really good luck, because sometimes the deer couldn't wind you, and they you know, so they couldn't smell you and they couldn't hear you as much because the storm was going on, and you get right up on them. I mean, I've walked right up on deer that just had no idea I was there. And it's not because I'm black ops or anything like that. It's because the storm, and I got, you know, I'm using it in my favor.
Yeah, I know when it's really windy out, I never see deer walking. I've never seen a deer walk when it's windy. They're either running or you don't see them.
That's right.
They're somewhere hiding out of the wind because they can't hear, they can't see. They're going to be probably facing the same direction the wind's going. So so they can see, you know, that's kind of what I'm figuring. They can see where they can't hear, they can hear behind them. But with all that noise, if you come up alongside of them, they're not going to hear you,
Yeah.
or smell you. And lots of times too, if the wind's blowing so hard, they're not going to smell you anyway, because it just blows right over them.
It always blew my mind shotgun hunting. We would be out in a random field. There'd just be a fence with a clump of grass or a tree or two. And it always seemed like those monster bucks would be out there because they could see you coming from forever away. They could
Right.
smell you. And, you know, like when I'm going shed hunting in the spring, I focus on a lot in on ponds and creeks because a lot of times too, if a deer gets wounded, it goes to water like a pond or a
Yeah.
creek. Just same thing as if they're sick. A lot of times they'll go to water. They'll get a fever and be burning up. And so it just, I think just water is completely underplayed sometimes in not just bow hunting, but for animal wildlife in general.
Yeah, they give me some ideas on what to do for the next season, and take a look at some of the other stuff, because we seem to always focus on putting feeders out to feed them, and it's like, well, maybe certain times of year we need to get water.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of those feeders and those deer, they'll wise up to that over the years too, and like your mature bucks sometimes they'll just go ghost mode come bow season. I know some
Right.
guys who just spend all the time and work and they get it set up and everything's coming together and bow season comes around and that buck disappears or he starts bedding somewhere different. And
Right.
some of these animals that make it 10 years out in the wild, they're pretty knowledgeable and they kind of observe what we're doing too.
Yeah, I've heard that many times, where we might be patterning them, but they're also patterning us.
That's right. That's right. I mean, yeah, and it's just a lot to think about. It's kind of interesting. That's what should soak you into bow hunting. Is all the different angles to think of it. Some of the best bow hunters I know, they've made a lot of mistakes and they've learned a lot and they're obsessed with it because even though they seem to get it right to me all the time, to them they're like, oh, come on, I can be better than this. I
Yeah.
made a rookie mistake the other day.
Yeah, but we all do that.
Yeah, ain't nobody perfect out there. And somebody who tells you is usually the one that makes the most mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah, just like the one that says, yeah, I don't need any instruction from you. I know what I'm doing. I can shoot good.
That's
And
right.
and you watch them shoot, and they're lucky to get 6-inch group at 20 yards. They're like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that means you're going to hunt at about 10 yards max.
That's another thing. Target practice, target practice, target practice. I mean, you can get out there. You need to know your bow just as much as you know your buck that you're going
Right.
out. That bow, I mean, that's an extension of you. That bow should feel as natural and be as much on your mind as that buck is, because the time it's not, that's where you're gonna mess up. I do know that to be true.
Well, and nice thing about the recurves, I've talked to a lot of people that shoot traditional archery, and the
Yeah,
advantage of that is it's simple.
yeah, yeah,
Now, it's not really simple to get them set up correctly. There's what people think, just grab an arrow and grab a bow and shoot it. Well, there's a lot more to it than that, but it's
yeah,
basically, something you draw with your fingers and you go through your process in there. But with the compound, we have timing of your limbs. You can change your upper and lower limb that act a little differently. Then you have your loop to put on there, and how do you put the loop on? One way you get better arrow flight, one way you don't. Then you have your release. Do you have a wrist strap? And then how is it put on? Is it put onto the hand, which is incorrect, or is it put back onto the wrist so that your hand can
yeah,
still move? And your hand bill, where straps on, your hand needs to move in front of it. I see people put them on their hand, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I can show you why you don't want to do that. It's just real simple. Take your hand and grab onto your hand and pull. Where do you feel the pressure? You feel it in the wrist, you feel it in the elbow, and you feel it in the shoulder. Now grab your wrist. Now pull. Where do you feel it? You don't feel it in the wrist. You don't feel it in the elbow. It's more in the back.
Because
So,
that's where it's meant to be. Yeah.
right, that's where it's meant to be, not on the hand, because that kind of tries to separate the hand.
Yeah.
And then you get the handheld ones, and it'll try to use your thumb to pull the trigger. Well,
Yeah.
that's not any better than pulling the trigger with your finger, which is
That,
incorrect anyway. You do that with a
yeah.
firearm, not a bow. And there's just so many more things. But I shoot my compound way more than I do the recurve. My
Yeah.
recurve set up for bow fishing because I just can't shoot quickly with a compound bow. My mindset changes.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Each of them, there's a pro and con to each of those. And
Right.
you're right. Some of those guys are really fast with compound bows, bow fishing. I wouldn't be, I don't think. I've never went bow fishing, but I always wanted to. But I don't think I'd be very quick with a compound bow, bow fishing. I think the recurve would be just a better feel and a quicker motion. And that's kind of the way you feel about it.
Right. With the compound, normally they're heavier weight. Even they
Yeah.
do have let off, but you're not really going through there. You're drawn through the weight and you get back and then you fire. You don't
Yeah.
have good habits because you're not following through. You're not looking at your target. You're trying to find your pins. A bow hunting bow should be hunt for deer and animals like that, never for fish, because it's
Yeah.
just not work. And besides, if you have a 70-pound bow or even 60-pound bow, those fishing arrows are not designed to be shot out of a high speed bow
Yeah.
because they can shatter. And those with the heavier ones are cladded inside of aluminum arrow. You have aluminum arrow with the fishing arrow inside of it. Those
Yeah.
are designed to do that. And now you're getting these special arrows when you're much better off to get a recurve bow, or one of the bow fishing bows. There's several of them out there. If anybody interested, check out the podcast, the last one I did, because we talked to a guy that actually has a bow fishing charter. So he does all that, and we went into quite a bit of detail on that. I won't go into it again. You just listen to the last podcast
Yeah.
and
That'd be
take care of that.
interesting.
But we talked in quite a bit about the bow fishing, and you're not aiming where you think you are,
Yeah.
because if you aim to hit the fish, you miss it. You have to aim to miss, basically, is what Tom was talking about,
That's
because
right.
it's into the water. And if you look at a pencil going through the water, it actually shifts over. So if you're
Yeah.
looking at the glass, it's in there. So you got in the water, and then outside the water, it shifts over to the right. If
Yeah.
you're looking at it, it's pointing to the right, it shifts to the right. So that means that where you see it is not where it's at.
Yeah.
So you have
That
to
makes
shoot
sense.
differently, not where it's at, because you're going to miss it.
That makes sense. That does make sense. And I see a lot of guys make that mistake. And like I said, I haven't done it myself, but I could see that being a good learning process. Try and learn through error on that one. If you
Right.
don't know, and that's why you should listen to podcasts like these, so you can learn that. Take that time out of making those mistakes and costing yourself, headaches. You know, and plus they're fun to listen to. I can listen
Yeah.
to podcasts all day.
Well, fortunately, there's lots of hours of podcasts. Yeah,
I,
you can listen to mine. This is podcast number 105, and the interviews run an hour to 2.5 hours, so we can get a lot of travel time in listening to podcasts, and they're
that's
I
right.
learned something from everyone. I learned something, and whether I'm talking to a young archer that's just starting out, or an archer's been doing it for decades, to semi-professional archers, professional archers, Olympic archers. I've talked to them all, and even in foreign countries, it's interesting how you go to a foreign country, like over in Serbia or South Africa or something like that. It's
Yeah,
archery is still archery. And,
yeah,
one of the podcasts I did probably a year ago now, I think, I did a history of archery. So I started doing a bunch of research on archery, to find out some information, because I was like, hey, that's kind of interesting. And
yeah,
I
yeah.
discovered that they have found evidence of archery that's 64,000 years old.
I believe it. They say that a lot of those simple-minded hunter-gatherers, they called them simple-minded back in the day.
Right,
That's what the historians refer to them as. But they find out that they're actually more advanced than they believed, and that would make
right.
sense that archery was involved in that process.
Yeah, they think the simple-minded because they think their mind is so advanced over the other ones. It's like, well,
That's right.
so we don't do calculus, but you know what? Every time you throw a ball, you're doing calculus.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Because just think, you have to calculate the speed you're throwing the ball, the angle you're throwing it at, and which direction to throw it, so you hit your target.
That's right. That's right. They don't factor that in. They call that simple-minded, like, and it wasn't. And a matter of fact, I feel like a lot of those historic hunters that we developed all these years and came to where we're at now, they taught us a lot. And I feel like their roots are maybe even, since they lived outdoors all the
Right.
time, I could only imagine how much more they knew than we actually know to this day, even with all the technology and the time, you know what I mean, that we put into it. We still work, a lot of us work jobs, and so actually just been way more advanced and better outdoorsmen all the way around. Probably were.
Right. Well, and then you see too, there's a couple books out that talk about plants, wild plants that can
Yeah.
basically save your life from, if you're getting, you get stuck in nettles. There's another plant that you can use that will counteract it. And there's all this stuff here, all these medicines that you can come up with just from the plants that now they're
Yeah.
trying to synthesize, to replicate what's in nature. But yet then they come in and say, well, no, that doesn't work. Well,
Yeah.
you based your stuff on this plant.
Mhm.
Now you're trying to replicate what this plant does naturally. And
Yeah. Yeah. And
there's
they knew that back in
right.
history, and we're still trying to figure it out to this day. So a lot of times, are we smarter? I don't know that we are.
Yeah, we get to go to the store and buy what we need. And when you look at your yard,
Yeah.
what in your yard is not edible? The grass, because the dandelions are edible. In fact,
Yeah.
some people make wine out of dandelions, because the
Yeah.
leaves are edible, the roots are edible, the flowers are edible.
Yeah.
Then you have there's like 3 different other plants that grow wild, that just grow, that people just dig up because they don't want them, and they're all
Yeah.
edible. There's a little plant called sheep sour that when you eat it, it tastes like lemon.
Yeah.
And I was like, I've tried to take a spot and get it to grow there, but it's like wherever it grows, it just randomly grows, and I can't get it, because I'd like to have a plot that has just those in there. But
Yeah. Yeah. It's unique. We're talking about that and what's edible, and it makes me think a lot of like deer diets. Like when you're whitetail archery hunting, a lot of times guys grow, certain food plots based on what they read and what they see. Sometimes though, like in my neighborhood, there's a big buck, and he's there every year for the apple tree. He loves that apple tree, and
oh
he'll come
yeah,
right into town to eat from that apple tree. So, I mean, we're talking about everything that's edible in our yard, and you start to think about diets of animals and any animal, really. I mean, I know um, for instance, I did a video on my YouTube channel a while back, and it was about cats, bobcats, and canines, or any cats and canines, and they're attracted to random flowers or different things in nature, like herbs that grow naturally and so forth. And a lot of times they're using that now with whitetail hunting, and there's attractants that you can use that are found right there in nature. So it makes you wonder, when you grow these food plots, everybody just goes with what's, put out there industry wide. But
Right.
I think I almost think the guy who thinks outside the box is the one who's going to win that. And he's going to be the guy who either puts, a couple of apple trees out in the middle of nowhere, or a guy who puts starts really getting into the idea of a deer and like of a whitetail or whatever they're hunting, and thinks, wow, this is kind of a unique thing, like catnip and bobcats. Okay, let's use that. Catnip is very attractive to bobcats. Okay, and it grows naturally in nature, and they get obsessed with it. Okay.
Well, your
So
house
imagine-
cats do the same thing.
Yes, they are. Yeah, house cats are the same thing. My dad he's hunted everything, and he's archery hunted for years. Matter of fact, he's a much better archery hunter than I am. Much better. I'm an amateur. I'm bottom line. He's moderate, but as far as an outdoorsman, he's very well rounded. And my dad would tell you that we need to back off and really think of the whole perspective of the animal. Whatever you're hunting, whatever you're trapping, but with bobcats and catnip, there's got to be things like that that trigger whitetails more than just planting clover, or deer love clover, right? I mean, we know that.
Right.
But is there something more attractive to bucks than does? Is there a plant that we're not thinking of? Is there all these guys are putting this energy into food plots? What if you put an apple tree out there? Why not? Why not put an apple tree up in the timber on a hill and have them bucks come up to that? I don't know. Just some food for thought from an outside perspective of a dumb trapper.
Well, and then too, if you have an apple tree, you always got a snack to eat. Just go pick it.
Right. That's right.
Because it's ready about the same time as deer season starts.
That's
So
right.
you go out there and eat your apple, and you're going to release that scent, and then throw the core down, and hey, deer might come by and eat your core while you're shooting it.
Yeah, that's right. And that gets me to thinking. Guys talk about snacks a lot, and I see memes posting, where guys forgot their snacks in the truck, and we've all been there. And
Yeah.
We've all been there. We're sitting out there, and we're like, can't believe I left that in the truck. I'm really hungry right now, and I was going to be out here for 8 hours. Now maybe 6.
Yeah.
But also guys got to talking about on a Facebook page urinating out of the tree when they're when you're waiting. You're there a long time. Some guys even collect their own urine in a bottle and just carry it in and out with them. But then there's a whole discussion about, can deer tell it's human urine, and does it spook them? What's your thoughts on that, Roy? I mean, do you have any?
Well, it depends on what you've been eating.
Yeah.
Try eating a bunch of asparagus, and then smell your pee when you go pee. Okay, it has a different smell. They've had when I had my store, this guy come in and had these little bags that you pee in. Basically, it's the same stuff they put in diapers. You just pee in it. But I always figured, okay, if I got to pee that bad, I'm going to get down on my tree stand. I'm going to go walk a bunch of ways away and go pee and come back. How much did I disturb the deer by walking around, as opposed to just peeing off the side of it? Now, don't pee off the front where you're going to have to walk down in it and, put your hands in the steps. But I've done this, like, I got to go. I can't hold it. You got your safety belt on. It's safer. It's quicker. Just just pee, and as long as you don't have 6 inches of clothing on.
Right.
That might be tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, as a guy, we could do that. Now, ladies, they might have to get down.
Yep, they may have to get
yeah.
down, or they may have to have one of those stands where they just, have basically a toilet right there, where they
Yeah.
just, yeah, it makes you wonder. I mean, is that your kind of thought on it then? Just go on the side of the tree, and
I do, fortunately, I don't do it too often, but I
yeah,
have done it. And it's like, I'm not getting down, because now that I got to climb down, I got to lower my bow down. And
yeah,
now then a deer comes by, I'll get my bow's already down.
yeah, that's
Now what
right.
do? I can't pull it up. And then now it's down. I'm climbing down. A deer comes by. Now I'm halfway down. I can't do that. Get down there. And now at any time that's inappropriate, the deer is going to come by.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
hard.
Every
It's
time.
hard enough to, while you're going, a deer not walk in on you while you're going.
Yeah, that's right. Because that one time where you think I'm okay, that you're right, that deer's gonna wander right in, and usually kind of hot, like
Yeah.
like moving along right towards you.
Yeah. Let's, I was, the chances of missing something while you're down is greater than just what scent you might leave from peeing off the side. Best
I-
with pee, ammonia. So no matter what is going to be peeing in a forest, it's going to be, same basic structure.
That's right.
There's going to be some things different in them, which we can't smell. But deer and dogs and stuff, they can smell those things that we can't smell. But
Yeah, but also you get to thinking then too, how familiar are they with people too?
right.
That buck may have been smelling people peeing out in the woods, because it may be a public ground, or maybe the farmers are peeing. Farmer's got to pee. He's got to pee.
Yeah, it's like, the old
It may
farmer
not
blow.
have
Your nose is running. Just plug one side and snot it out. Snot the other side out and go.
That's right. That's right. It may
You know.
not even flag a deer. He may just be like, oh, yeah, that's a human, but I've smelt that over here, there, and there. Like,
Yeah.
that's not even a thing to,
And if they've never smelled it, they're either going to one of three things. That's always going to happen. Either they're going to ignore it,
yeah,
run away from it, or come to it. They might be
Yeah.
curious. They never smelled. They might be curious what it is.
yeah. It may be an attractant, actually.
Right. So
Is there salt in urine? I believe there's salt in urine too, isn't there?
I believe there probably is, because your body's going to get rid of all the chemicals, and depends on how much salt you eat. I would imagine there's fairly high level of sodium in there.
Yeah,
I don't know.
and
Maybe we can get a doctor on to let us know.
yeah. Do we need to be using our urine as deer attractant? Do they want to lick it like a salt block? Because all honesty, Roy, here's a good perspective. As a trapper, a deer will snap off our traps because, and there was a big debate in the amongst trappers on a Facebook page. Is it the salt and the coyote urine and stuff that we use? Because there's even a video out there recently of a whitetail eating a snake. Deer, just because deer are vegetarians by trait, do they get to craving sugar, salt, protein? You know what I mean? Like, there's a whole conversation to be had about that. Because they do snap off our traps, and all that's there a lot of times is meat or salt. And are they going for the salt? And why are a coyote could kill them? Why are they going to a coyote pee station sometimes,
Yeah.
And they will. They will. It's weird. It makes you really get the cylinders in your head get to firing, and you wonder, do I know as much as I think I know?
Yeah, surprises every day.
Yeah, and that's a trapper's perspective on it. A whitetail will literally snap off our trap. If you're wondering, no, we don't catch them. They got hooks,
Yeah.
they pull right out. But they do step on our traps and are attracted to our meat, nasty, raunchy meat that we throw down a hole. And sometimes there's not even urine on the set. So that makes you wonder, like, are they going there for the meat and the salt that's in the meat to preserve it? Or, why are they there? Or do they just, is it a curiosity thing,
Yeah, I'd never heard that before. So that's kind of interesting that, they'll go to things like that. And, you think the deer go to the normal things that everybody talks about, the corn, the soybeans, the alfalfa, the other, the beets and stuff like that everybody wants to grow. And now I'm kind of thinking, maybe not putting out a food plot is the actual thing to do. Something different, something that's a little bit different in their diet. That what are they looking for? And I know they really go to the salt stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to take stock salt and put that deer cocaine in it. I actually call it deer cane now because they want to call it cocaine because I guess they're paranoid that people might think it's cocaine and smoke it or something or whatever you do with it. I don't know. But I actually use the black magic. I like that a little bit better because I actually smell that. And it's like, ooh, that smells good. I want to eat that. But I'll mix that with like stock salt because the stock salt's really cheap. And now you put that out and they'll dig big old holes to get that salt that's leached out.
Yeah. And by the way, Roy, if you and I say anything that triggers a lure maker who makes deer lure, we want a kickback on this kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we want a kickback.
Yeah. You never know who's listening, because there's people listening all over. And hey, we got an idea. Let's go with it. Let's figure out how to do something with it. And
that's right. And here's another thought, Roy. This is used in coyote calls for lures, tonquin, which is a deer musk. So we use that to attract coyotes, but it also attracts deer early season. So I don't know. You get into musk and foods and all kinds of different things and plants, and really makes you wonder if you're that guy who's a bow hunter, whatever the animal you're going for, you need. I really feel like being the guy who thinks outside the box can make you a much better bow hunter. For whatever you're hunting, whether it be bear. I know a lot of guys who bear hunt with bows, and by the way, you've got more gallstones than I do. It scares me to watch what you do. And but you guys, what are you guys using for bait? Like to get bear to come, because I see black bear, they use bait stations. They use a lot of raccoon baits and like fruits and stuff. What are you using for your brown bear stations? For bow hunting brown bear. That makes you wonder, are they using bait stations for them? I don't know.
Yeah, food for thought, right?
Yeah, food for thought. Yeah.
This whole podcast has been about eating.
Yeah.
Whether we're eating or
bottom line, me and Roy are hungry. We're starving to death, and you can send us food to our own addresses. That's what we're getting at.
Yeah, we're hungry. Send us some food. We'll fix it up and make a video on how we fixed it and how it tastes.
That's right. We'll go in depth with it, and but we won't be hungry anymore. And the more food you send, the better, because we're both clearly pretty hungry at this point.
Yeah. The direction some of these podcasts go, you never know. That's why it's so fun.
When you asked me to when you reached out and asked me to do this podcast, I was like, well, I don't archery hunt as much as I used to. I was never that great at it, but I'm like, you know what, this might be interesting, especially when you said sometimes it heads in a weird direction or a unique direction.
the only requirement is we start talking about archery.
Yeah, yeah, and
Notice I
that's
said
fair.
start.
That's fair. And we've linked a lot of stuff to archery. So I've
Right.
been pretty, now I got, I'm thinking in my head, I need to go get my bow and and start making some kind of lure for deer. Like what do I got to do?
Yeah,
Um,
do some testing. And I know there's people out here that have talked to the raised deer,
yeah,
and it's that's what they do. And something like that would be, um it's like, okay, now they're captive deer, they're raised, they're not wild deer, but
yeah,
you could put out two different things and see which one they go to,
yeah.
which one gets eaten up first. And
That,
then you can do your test. Okay, this here formula, they ate this before this one, and then put that formula in another one, or two different ones or something, and just say, okay, what are they eating mostly? And then you can kind of say, okay, here's what they want. But yet then it's got
yeah,
to be, what time of year is it? Spring, summer, fall, winter? What time of the year? Because
yeah,
like you and I, we crave different things different times of the year.
yeah. That's
And
right.
when the
That's right.
watermelon's ready, I eat lots of watermelon. I plant
Yeah.
watermelon, and all year round I'm eating sweet potatoes because I grow a lot of sweet potatoes. And
Well,
so each season is a little different. What's ripe is what we're trying to eat.
and you kind of triggered two thoughts for me. Um, so with coyotes and bobcats, my dad always told me to watch your cats and dogs, and you can learn from your typical house cat or canine. You can learn a lot of habits and traits of coyotes and bobcats. Well, if you raise deer, I bet you could sure pick up on some things that us guys who haven't don't know about deer. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
feel like that gives you an inside view that some of us don't see to deer and some of their habits. And another thing you triggered, Roy, in my thought process is what you know, it, your average coyote stops and pees every 160 yards in nature. It's like they're enslaved to the idea that it's a territorial instinct. They have to do it. And they do the same thing when they poop. They mark. It's a way of marking, and it's a
Right.
territorial instinct. Now, I don't know. Do they sell whitetail urine? They sell dopey. I know, right? I mean, I've never used it, but I believe they do sell dopey.
Right. And they do have whitetail, that's specifically whitetail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but it
But
makes you wonder.
but it
Um,
depends on who makes it. Some of them are, like pure collected, from it's collected from one deer, and other ones are just kind of mix, and sometimes they're not even all just pure deer, so you
that's
got to
right.
look at that. So, those that are putting attractants out, that who knows what kind of urine might be in it.
That's right. And in the trapping industry, they sell coyote urine, bobcat urine, and so on and so forth. But there's a whole conversation we've had that's similar to deer urine. Is some guys collect from the same canine, and also what are they feeding that canine? What are they feeding that
Right.
coyote that they're collecting as urine? And maybe the same thing with whitetail too. Maybe you're buying a urine for whatever you're bow hunting, and maybe it's a cheap knockoff brand, or it's been diluted down to where it's not as great. Maybe you need to be looking at a more direct urine with a healthy whitetail on a normal diet. And maybe that's going to attract that buck that you're wanting more than just your generic, or, maybe your quality of your urine you're buying. Maybe that's a whole conversation rather than do they sell deer urine, which I actually knew the answer to.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and it,
sorry, it's been a long day, guys.
yeah. The other option is when you shoot that doe,
Yeah,
collect the urine from that doe.
yeah. That in the trapping industry, guys, we're talking about that. You can freeze urine, maybe freeze the urine from the doe. What do you think, Roy?
Yeah. I've actually done that once or twice. Actually collected the urine from it, but you got to have the stuff ready and be prepared for it. With the syringe to suck it out, And then you
Yeah,
can't keep it in the refrigerator. You're going to keep it in very long, because it don't take long for it to go bad. There's no
yeah,
preservatives. So you got to keep it frozen and then bring it out and use it. And I almost think, the better way would be to take that and soak it in like cotton balls,
yeah, yeah.
and
That's a
then
good
and then
idea.
put a couple of cotton balls in I don't know how many anymore, but the old 35 millimeter canisters. You'd pop one of those open and set it down, and then you get
Yeah,
done, you put the lid back on it. um
that's a
I
good
don't know
idea.
if they have anything like that. And now then, it's you get back, you put it in the freezer, and
That's
after 2 or 3 times out, in the wintertime, it's not going to get really bad, but after a while, then you just dump them on the ground and leave them,
yeah,
and fill
that's
them up the next time. And now what's better than the urine from the deer that you just shot from that area?
yeah, that's a good idea, Roy. I really that's a neat idea. Freeze cotton balls with the urine, like you said. Um, and in the trapping industry, they sell these like eggs, and what they do is we put lure in it, and you hang it from a tree. I wonder if anybody's done that with for luring deer. If there's an attractant to deer, whether it be urine or something else, maybe you could hang we call them like scent eggs or something in the trapping industry. I don't use
Right.
them, haven't yet, but I'm going to. But maybe there's something like that you hang up for a deer and it draws it in. Because I mean, deers are, I'm saying deers, it's deer, are curious animals by nature too.
Right.
Would you say?
Yeah, and they have little pads. I've seen their little white pads that you soak with the urine, and you can hang them up. I've actually taken a piece of the hide and dried
Okay.
it and used that to hang up.
Did it
And
work?
and and, and I don't know how well it works if you don't put a trail camera out. That was before trail cameras.
Yeah.
But when you go out there and then you see that it looks like they've messed around with it, then hey, it works. It's a way to get your scent out there. And
Yeah.
unless you're saving the hide for something, they always got pieces. Even if you're saving your hide to make something out of, there's always corners that aren't going to do you any good. You cut them off, and you can use that to poke a hole in it and put a string on it and hang it up and put your scent on there. And um,
Yeah. You know, um, this conversation we're having is it's very interactive. It's helping me a lot to understand some of the things you've seen, Roy, and some of the things I haven't, and some of the things that I've seen. And another thing I want to warn guys who are out there um, running like baiting deer, legally, the way you're supposed to. Um, Bobcats and coyotes have been known to watch bait sites and to kill these deer while they're focused on eating. So if somebody's spending all that time and energy and money, I don't want you to fail. If you got trail cams, you need to watch those and make sure those coyotes and bobcats aren't moving in and just killing your deer. Because I
yeah,
know I was trapping for a guy. He owns a property on a river bottom. I'm not going to say his name, but he has bait stations for whitetail in the off season, like a lot of guys do. And there was blood all over the place. Well, what happened was coyotes came in and killed his deer that he had been growing and watching for years. That's something you guys need to think about, as well as letting your local trapper in there when it's not close to hunting season. And
right.
you don't want your deer to get kicked out near hunting season, but at the same time, like there's guys like me who do animal damage control. A lot of those deer that I go in and I'm trapping coyotes and bobcats when it's not deer season, they get used to me. That's another thing, Roy, that I kind of want to talk about is like they get used to me driving in there or walking in there every day. They don't even run anymore, and I'll just kill coyotes and bobcats and it'll help you. So if you need somebody to help you maintain that, and your local trapper is a decent trapper and he's got some common sense, maybe that's something you may want to consider, as well as raccoons getting your bait stations. Because
Right.
I just watched 2 sow raccoons with litters today chase off a bunch of heifers cattle, heifers, like chase them off of their own food that the farmer had just, that the rancher had just put out for them. Like, can you imagine that? It was the craziest thing. I tried to stop the truck to video it. Two sow raccoons with their kits chasing off full-grown heifers from their own food that was put out there for the heifers. It was quite interesting.
Yeah, I might have to start doing some critter control where the one property we hunt, because on the cameras I'm getting coyotes and raccoons. Yeah, all the time. I'm getting more raccoons and coyotes than I am deer, and I think it's time to start getting rid of some of them. Find a trapper that wants them, because you know, I get the permit I have a fur bearer's permit on mine, you know, because I'm a veteran, and we get the all-inclusive one. Same as retired here in Nebraska, where it's the hunt, the fish, the trapping, you know, the fur bearer permit, and you know, all your stamps you need. Now I still gotta get the archery tag, you know, the deer tag, and you know, stuff like that, but it's all in there. So I can go out and I can trap them because I got the fur bearer's permit. So I can go out and do that, and I just need to find somebody that can do something with the rest of this stuff, because you know, I don't want to just shoot them, because you can get out the coyotes and raccoons,
and see, that's a relationship that should happen, Roy. Like, even let's say you trap them, right? You buy some traps and you decide to trap them. That's something fun you can do while checking on your deer, but also to manage the predators on there. But also, let's say you develop a friendship with your local trapper. You guys can go together and learn together and have fun, and maybe even bow hunt together there, you know, later on. After,
yeah,
you know, and but it's very important that even if you're not allowing a trapper in there, maybe you, like in your situation, Roy, you start managing the wildlife yourself, because it's very important. When you have 20 coyotes running through one river bottom, they're going to be killing deer, you know, and you can help your own situation at bow season. I would hate to see guys who put in all the work and then they get to bow season and their buck's been dead 40 yards off the way that they didn't know about because the coyote. So that's,
they do kill a lot.
They do. They kill every day. They kill every day, and the colder it gets, the more they kill. That's the thing about predators. So.
Yeah, I'll have to check. I do know one trapper, but he's in Council Bluffs, so he's Iowa trapper like you, and I'm in Nebraska, so I don't know how that would work. I don't know if you can transfer him over, but he probably know a trapper over here that I can. I think I do know a guy. He used to trap. I don't know if he still does. That lives up the street, so I'll see if he still traps. And it's like, okay, if I get him here,
yeah, you guys should connect. You guys should connect, and maybe he can give you hints on trapping some other things if you have questions. And maybe if he bow hunts, he can be like, "Hey, Roy, what do you do that helps you bow hunt out there?" You know.
Yeah, I might see if I can check with him and see, you know, what we can do, because we can put some traps, because we know where one of the dens are at, because we see it all the time, and we can see it, and there's a couple of them there, and it's actually a spot where the deer have been coming through during hunting season, right before shooting time, and that's also right where I've seen more traffic on coyotes and raccoons in that one area, and it's kind of you can't really see it from the road. You really can't see that corner very well. There's a couple spots you can, but it's kind of back out of nowhere, and right in the corner, and there's a cornfield on one side and alfalfa in this one, and I think there's corn on the other side, and then go to the hill, there's more corn, but you know, it's right there. So we just don't have a good place to put a tree stand up.
Yeah, that's another thing, Roy. I had this perfect location that these nice bucks were traveling every day along a pond, but there was not a tree there was a couple dead trees, and there's not a good spot for a blind. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, how can I figure this out? So I didn't have any ideas, because, you know, it's a trail and it goes on the side of a hill, and there's no trees that aren't dead that you know.
Yeah.
And there's just a little brush there, but but the bucks see you coming. So it was just kind of one. I had that happen to me several years ago, and I was like, and I still can't hunt that spot. And there's still big bucks that go by there all the time.
Yeah, that's a rifle spot.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Maybe I just need to switch weapons at that point.
Yeah. Well, and around here now, it used to be rifle during rifle season, archery shut down. Now they just let it go, but we have to wear the orange and everything else. But you know, I'm
To
going out
bow
during
hunt?
rifles. Yeah, to bow hunt during the 9 days of rifle season, you got to wear
Yeah.
orange because you're
Okay,
out
they
there.
have-
Other hunters are out there with high powered rifles. They need to be able to see you. Other than that, we just wear camo.
See, they had that conversation here in Iowa too, but I didn't know how it turned out because, obviously the rifle season's newer to us.
Right.
And archery conflicting with, I know some guys mentioned it at our local DNR meeting. I go to the DNR meeting so I can talk with the other guys about whitetail, about pheasant, about ducks, about trapping, all of it. And they were having that discussion because at the end of the day out there, nobody wants to hurt another hunt outdoors.
Right.
So it's interesting you said that because here in Iowa, I don't know that conversation's happened on the bigger level yet.
Well, even non-hunters, I've seen some people out walking around. I see, this is rifle season. If you're out walking around, you probably need to wear orange just so that they can see you. Because it is rifle season, especially, those that like to walk through the forest and, areas where they could be hunting. It's like, put your orange on. You're not hunting. You don't have to have a permit, but wear that orange. And,
just protect yourself. Nobody wants anybody to get hurt or die at the end of the day out there. We all want to enjoy the outdoors together, safely,
And just because they're walking around doesn't mean they've ruined your hunt.
No, it doesn't.
As you've probably seen, somebody's walking down that you're just going to move in circles around, goes behind them. If they're coming in, they just circle around. They don't get spooked and they can chase them to you like they did one time. They chased them right to me.
That's
a little earlier, but than I was planning. But one of those things that people walking around and isn't always a bad thing. And
it's not. Sometimes, some days, those deer, even when you think they should be moving, sometimes they'll just bed down. For whatever reason that we don't know. And sometimes you're right. It's great to have somebody out walking around somewhere, to kind of stir things up, get things moving. I've had days where I thought for sure that the deer would be moving around, and I'm out there for hours and there's not one deer walk by, and it's not even cold, and you're like, okay, somebody needs to do something out there.
It's you just never know. Some places, you might be and they see a human or smell a human or hear one, they're the next county over. And other places, they just walk a couple of feet, not out of sight, and let you walk by. And
that's right.
There was one I was hunting. It used to be old railroad tracks, and the one lady, she used to walk those tracks every day. She'd walk. She lived up the hill from it, so she'd walk those tracks every day because it was kind of her property's right next to it, and then we was hunting the other property, so it's kind of like a no man's zone in between there. And I was walking out this one time, and I look over, and here's this deer bedded down, maybe 10 feet off of this trail. I looked over at it. I just kept walking. It didn't get up and move. If I'd have stopped, it'd have been gone.
That's interesting you say that. My dad always told me when we were hunting in a shotgun group, when you're the guy walking, pushing, driving the deer, he said, if you think there's a deer, it's really brushy, sometimes just stop real quick. And he said, and if they're there, a lot of times that'll kick them up. But otherwise, they'll like to walk right on by them.
Yeah. I even looked at it and it looked over at me and it just kept going. She just thought I was a normal walker. And I had my bow in my hand. There's just nothing I could do. I just kept going. I knew if I stopped, it'd be gone. I'd had to walk way off and then, start sneaking back really slowly and take off my boots because they make too much noise. Yeah, that's why, you wear the moccasins and they're a lot softer.
Yeah,
You don't crunch your feet to kind of foam around it, but depends on
that's
how your
that's a
feet
good
are walking outside.
that's a good point of conversation too. Is guys a lot of times wear boots, but moccasins were made because they were quieter and more comfortable.
Right.
I believe. And yeah,
It-
I was watching. Is it Steve Ranelli, the Meat Eater? You ever watch that?
oh yeah, yeah. I
And
watch his show quite a bit.
him and Hogan. Uh, the speaker for the UFC. I'm a big fan of
Oh,
him.
yeah. Yeah, I know who you're talking about. I just can't
I can't think
think of
of
his
his
name right
name
now.
either. And anyways, he was bow hunting, and I can't remember. They were hunting whitetail or something, and he was trying to sneak up on these deer before dark, and they had split up, and he kicked off his shoes and barefooted so he wouldn't kick them up. And he did a good job. He got close, but it was just too dark to send a shot.
Right.
But he went rogue. He went old fashioned style. He kicked off the shoes, and sometimes it's worth it, and it pays
I
off.
I did that one time. I was going down, and here's this little road that was the farmer used to go between one field and another field. And there's grasses growing up on one side, and it got smaller and smaller and smaller, and to where it was about maybe 1.5 feet tall, all the grass was.
Yeah,
And it's like, and this deer was bedded down, oh, maybe 10 feet off the road. And I took off my boots. So I'm in my wool socks, and I'm sneaking up there, and I got right even with it. I was 10
yeah,
feet away from the deer. Now I have a compound bow in my hand. You
yeah.
can't shoot them sideways like a crossbow. If I had a crossbow,
No,
I could have shot it. And I'm like, now what do I do? I got this close. I'm, you know, dead shot right here. But
yeah,
I know if I try and get up high enough, I can draw that bow. It's going to see me move because I'm way too
yeah,
close to it, and
yeah.
I'm not going to get a shot off anyway. And it's like, but I got so close to it. It's like, oh, this is kind of cool, because I'd heard that walking in your boots makes a lot more noise. Walking in your socks or bare feet or moccasins is going to be a lot quieter. And
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and you can say when you walk and you step on a stick with your boots, it breaks.
Every
Now,
time.
in your bare
Almost
feet or
every
socks or moccasins, your foot kind of forms around it, it doesn't break. And so I wanted to
time.
try it,
That's
and
right. That's right.
it worked good. It's just I
Yeah,
wasn't in a position to take the shot, so I just kind
yeah,
of way out of position. Now
yeah. But I mean,
with the ring curve, you could have shot side. You could shoot sideways. If you
but
practice it.
but but you learned from that, didn't you? You learned a
Right.
lot from that experience.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's what makes bow hunting and being an outdoorsman just fun all the way around. Is
Oh yeah.
doing those things.
And when you're up in your tree stand and they walk underneath your tree stand, it's like you're looking through the grate on your tree stand, and there's your deer.
like man, that's really not how it was supposed to go today.
Yeah, and they walk underneath, and I had one that was, oh, it was so close. I could see the hair change color when I shot it
Oh my.
because it sliced it, because the underneath side's kind of gray and then the reddish on the outside, at the
Yeah.
time of year I was doing that. And I seen the hair turn gray where I hit it. I knew
That that
exactly where I hit it because I seen the hit.
that's a good feeling too.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I know this is a good shot. I know exactly where it hit. I don't have to
Yeah.
wonder where I hit it because I seen it change colors.
Yeah,
And
that's right. That's right. Roy, so a whole nother aspect of bow hunting is when you hit a deer and it runs off and you can't find it.
oh
And
yeah,
so in the trapping world, I got a dog that I've been training for trapping for when I run drags on my traps where I catch a coyote
right.
and run off. Makes you wonder. I know there's a guy near here who's a whitetail outfitter, and he has dogs trained to track deer. for those situations. So he's on call. So you can literally call him, and he has dogs that will track and find your deer for you for a fee. But it
Well,
makes you
yeah,
wonder. It makes you wonder if your average guy who just loves bow hunting, maybe it's you should have a dog. You know what I mean? Somebody who can help you track a deer if you get one, and you can't find it, or the blood trail goes dry. And being a trapper and a hunter, I know that a lot of times, and you I'm sure you know this too, Roy, is that they go for brush, right? Like a big brush pile. That buck can crawl up in that thing and you may never find it. But
oh yeah,
if you got a dog that's trained to smell, that dog could take you to that exact spot.
yeah. I had one time I shot a deer. It was in fairly close. It run out into the field, 30 yards away, stopped broadside. That's like, okay, I've shot it once. I'm gonna stick another arrow in it. So
Yeah.
I actually used my safety harness to hold me up because I had to get around a tree, and I shot it again. Now, if I hadn't shot it, might have just laid down there and been done. But no, it run up
Yeah.
the top of the hill, and where it ended up going was it took a right turn in the brush and kind of buried in the brush. And we're walking around for a couple of hours trying to can't find nothing. So we finally go back, and sure enough, like, did it go in here? And it looked in it. Sure enough, that's where it went in.
Yeah.
And it just normally they don't take a right turn, but it's going up there. We figured, okay, it's going to go. It can either go this way or this way. No, it went up, took a right turn right into the brush, and hid down in there.
And that's a good lesson for a new bow hunter. Maybe in the future, if you're a new bow hunter, if you don't have a dog, you maybe before season line up a friend who does, because a lot of times,
Yeah.
like Roy, if you hadn't seen that, you may not be able to find blood for 100 yards, 200 yards sometimes.
Oh,
If
yeah.
and that dog's going to take you to that exact spot, and right where that deer ran in to that brush, and that may be the only way you find your deer is with the nose of a dog.
Yeah, I know there's times when, I had my hunting dog that it was kind of weird. He was an interesting dog, but he was going out, and at that time the place was they actually stocked some pheasants, so they were a little more sit tight.
Okay.
I think they did it one year, but it really didn't do much good because they won't survive if they're not shot. So I'm
Yeah.
going along, and he sticks his nose down. He's pointing down at this clump of grass. And I said, come on, let's go. And so stuck his head back down in there. And I said, come on, let's go. Next thing, he just buried his head under the ground and pulled out a pheasant. Like, it wasn't shot or nothing. It was still alive.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't move, and he knew it was there, and he just snatched it up and like, okay.
And see, that's Roy, that's why I got hooked on canine and bobcat trapping and stuff, is because some of the noses and instincts of these animals just blow my mind like that. Like, he knew it was there. You or I would have walked past it, never had a clue.
Yeah, because they didn't kick up, because we're standing there a couple times, it just sat tight, and nose said it was there. And on the same trip, he went running off, and next thing you know, it comes out of a forest area and pulled out a pheasant that had been shot. It was planted in the trees. And
isn't that crazy? Crazy stuff.
Yeah, amazing how good their noses are. And
it really is. It really is. Well, Roy, I hate to say I got to cut out, but my wife, if I don't cook these steaks soon, she's going to cook me.
Well, it's time to eat. I got a couple things I need to get done too, and get some food in me. And yeah, it's been really great talking with you. It's been a lot of fun, and I learned a lot from the show. I think your camera froze.
There you are.
Yeah, you froze on me here.
Okay, sorry about that, but I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, Roy. And it was a great time talking with you this
Yeah,
afternoon.
I've learned a lot. I said
I
just
do
before you
too.
froze, I've learned a lot out of this and got some more ideas and that's the fun part of this. We get to talk to, you know, archers,
It-
hunters, trappers, fishermen, you know, everything. It's just all, we just have fun outdoors.
Yeah, yep. I had a great time and I learned a lot from talking to you, Roy, and it really got, my wheels spinning and my
Yeah,
passion for it going. So I just really appreciate the opportunity and for anybody who listened, I hope it was as fun as it was for us.
I know it sure was fun. And sometimes we get talking too long and like, yeah, okay. Now today, that's most of what I've done. I've probably spent 4 hours talking on about archery today or longer.
Well, now it's
And
time for
fun.
you to eat some food too.
Yeah, time to go get something to eat. And yeah, it's been great talking with you, and I'm sure we'll talk again later.
That sounds good, Roy. And you can message me and get a hold of me anytime. And so can anybody who listens to this. I'm No Name Trapper on YouTube. Logan Exline's my name on Facebook. I'll talk outdoors with anybody. And Roy, you're a great guy. I'm sure you enjoy it as much as I do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's a lot of fun, and yeah, I'll put some links in the description on how to get a hold of you. And
okay, I appreciate that. Appreciate
yeah,
that.
my name is Roy Canterbury, and I've been host today on Arch Talk 101 with Logan as our special guest today. And thanks for watching or listening, and we'll see you next time.